Retro.
Hi, this is Emily Swallow, the Armorer in The Mandalorian. You're listening to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust. This is the way.
Welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
And we are wrapping up this week with the last episode of the show that's not going to be in 4 digits and a look at some recent Star Wars news. But before we get into that, Jay, you want to remind everybody where we can be found on the internet?
Absolutely. So you can find us where you can find us on all of our previous 998 shows, including this one. Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust.
All right. The chisel line, the signal is boosted to maximum output, the shield is down, and we are now broadcasting to the galaxy. It's kind of funny, Jay. It's like when kids are like 9 and they're about to turn 10 and they want to let you know they're about to turn 10. And here we are now getting around everyone that, yeah, this is episode 999. We're going to have 1,000 episodes, millennia coming up here.
We're going to be big kids.
Yeah, that's right. We're serious podcasters, finally. No, we're not. And we never have been, but that's okay. This is all about our weekly appointment to talk Star Wars, and that's what it's all about. So,
and we love it.
All right. There's a line, signals boost to maximum output, chills down, we're now broadcasting the galaxy. This is the week's news. So, did you watch the Super Bowl, Jay?
I did up until the last quarter when I fell asleep, but I did. You
had to like defense to appreciate that game. That's for certain.
It's true.
Sorry to all of our Boston friends, but I was happy the Seahawks won. I'm going to leave it at that. We had rumors that there was going to be a new trailer for the Mandalorian and Grogu that was going to debut during the Super Bowl. Well, we didn't quite get that. Instead, we got a fun teaser spot that disguised itself as a Budweiser Clydesdale commercial to start off. And they went so far as to get Sam Elliott to do the voiceover on this thing.
Oh my gosh, yes.
How much did that catch you by surprise?
All of it. All of it. You know, I'm sitting there on the couch and kind of sort of, excited for the Super Bowl commercials because, of course, that's, one of the big reasons that we love the Super Bowl is the commercials. And so this started, and at first I thought, wait, is that a tauntaun?
Yeah.
What am I seeing? And then it completely took me by surprise. And then I seriously had my jaw like dropped wide open. And I thought to myself, what did I just see?
Yeah.
It totally did take me by surprise. What about you?
Well, I just loved how well done it was in that, they gave us the distance shot and it was all the snow and you saw something charging towards the screen and the outline made it look like the Clydesdales and pulling a cart, like so many of those Anheuser-Busch commercials are. And then they did a far shot and you still couldn't entirely make out what you were seeing. And then they went so far to get Sam Elliott to do the voiceover. And as soon as I heard that, this is a commercial, this is Anheuser-Busch's commercial. I don't even know that they did one during the Super Bowl, but that's neither here nor there. They did. That's right. They talked about how they're American beer. But then we got the close up of the tauntaun snout. I was like, wait a second. What was great about that is that they use very similar shots in those beer commercials, the snout of the Clydesdale and the like, and the charging hose, but they use the tauntaun's feet and stuff. And then they did the close up on Grogu's hand as he's using the force to pull the reins out of Din Djarin's hands. I know it didn't land with everybody, and I'm sorry if that's the case. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. It didn't give us any story beats. We already know that there's going to be some sort of a snow planet, whether it's Hoth or something else, because we've already had the teaser trailer that came out a couple months ago. And so this was just a fun reminder that the movie's coming. It was a fun way to use the IP. I thought this was great. It was only a 30-second commercial. They didn't. Who are they kidding? They don't need to do 2 minutes to get us into the theaters. We're going to see this movie. So I thought it was fantastic.
Oh, 100%. And it's obviously garnering a lot of attention and a lot of discussion as well. And I mean, I'm not harboring any thoughts that this is actually something that's in the movie. I mean, no, I don't think so. I
Oh,
mean,
no.
maybe they will be utilizing Tauntaun mounts and that type of thing, but this is just totally fun. As you said, it's this kind of spoof on the Budweiser Clydesdales. It was brilliant and it's getting everyone talking, and that was the purpose. So there you go.
Yeah.
Mission accomplished.
So the voiceover Samuel Elliott did was, sometimes we choose our path. Other times the path chooses us. Through it all, we keep pushing forward, driven by a deeper purpose, guided by an unseen force. That was a nice play on words.
Oh, yeah.
The journey never gets easier. The bond just gets harder to break. This is the way. Get this guy a role in Star Wars. I mean, come on.
I was going to say, as only Sam Elliott could do, you know? I mean, truly.
And then you get that last little image of the Tauntaun leaning over and Grogu petting it on the snout. So very effective. 30 seconds for my money.
Definitely.
The other big Star Wars reference from the Super Bowl was the Seattle Seahawks defense, which is known as the dark side.
Yeah.
And they had a graphic at the beginning. I can't remember which one of the players it was that had a Sith lightsaber that they were using. I was like, what? If I wasn't already rooting for Seattle to begin with, that would have pushed me over the edge.
Well, you know, I had seen some references to their defense being referenced as the dark side. And I'd seen, you know, they were playing the Imperial March. And, you know, of course, we were watching all the playoffs and everything. And then the fans in the stands with their signs and the whole 9 yards, literally 9 yards. And so then, but those infographics and everything, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I wonder if Lucasfilm gave them permission to you know, because it's obviously, you know, iconic kinds of copyrighted images and that type of thing. But then again, I'm thinking to myself, wow, that is such a brilliant marketing ploy, not only for Star Wars, but just, you know, in general, because I mean, the Sith and, you know, that type of energy just goes very, very well with their defense for sure.
I'm not sure how much it's caught on, but semi-related to this is that my favorite team is the Chicago Bears. Shout out to Dan Zaire. He and I talk about the Bears every Sunday. The Luther Burden, who is their second round pick out of my alma mater, University of Missouri, is wide receiver, has been starting to get referred to as Darth Burden in some circles because during one of the games against the Packers, he actually reached up and choked the quarterback he was playing against. But at any rate, I don't approve of the choking, but I do kind of love the fact that he is, at least in some places, being referred to as Darth Burden. That just makes my Star Wars heart. You know, my favorite pro team, my favorite college team, and my favorite franchise, Star Wars, all in one thing. So
perfect. Couldn't be more perfect. Somebody I saw on Instagram had put together a redesign of all of the NFL teams as different Star Wars logos.
Yeah.
And I'll have to find that and send. Did you see that?
I've seen a couple different versions of it. It's been done a couple times over the years.
Mm-hmm.
The one that always drives me nuts is when they try to call the New England team the New England Jedis. Jedi is plural. It does not need the us. So
that's why every time I hear somebody say Jedi is like, ugh, no, that's not correct, but that's okay. But
the Bears usually end up as the Ewoks or the Wampa, one of the two, or sometimes the Tauntauns. But
that's funny.
Yeah,
I would like to see Cleveland with like maybe a Nexu, you know, instead of the dog pound, it could be like the Nexu pound. That would be fun.
Yeah, that would work. The other thing that's come out recently, and I found this interesting, is that the California Film Commission, apparently they could just do this, has released what the budget for the Mandalorian and Grogu was. And it comes out to $166.4 million, which is a lot of money, but it is by far the cheapest movie from the Disney era of Star Wars so far.
Really?
By comparison, The Force Awakens had a budget of $245 million. Rogue One was done for $200, which blew my mind considering all the reshoots that they had to do.
Mm-hmm.
The Last Jedi was the most expensive at $317 million. I still can't wrap my mind around that. I'm trying to figure out what that made it it's so much more expensive compared to the others. Solo Star Wars Story was $275, which is not surprising considering what they had to do with Ron Howard coming in to take place of Lord Miller. And The Rise of Skywalker was also $275 million. What are your initial reactions and thoughts about that?
Well, I would probably think to myself, okay, is it just because of the fact that they've gotten better about budgeting and how they're spending their money? Or are they being more frugal? You know what
Mhm.
I mean? Because I
Yeah.
feel like a lot of that, as we've seen from some of these other movies, there's definitely been a lot of money thrown at them. I think, I don't want to say necessarily out of desperation, but just to make sure that they were good, kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? Whereas the Mandalorian and Grogu, it's already, maybe they have a lot of the assets already just from the show. And maybe there's a lot of things that have already been able to be recycled, but I'm hoping it's because they've just been more smart about how they're spending the money. Although with The Last Jedi, I mean, you have to think about it. And the same thing with The Force Awakens. You've got big name stars. I mean, you're talking about, in the original Force Awakens, you're talking about Harrison Ford and, Carrie Fisher were both in that one. I mean, all of those things. So, and then of course, Mark Hamill. But what do you think?
Right. Well, a couple things come to mind. One, there's not the frequency of movies making $1 billion as there was pre-COVID. And so there's been a lot of franchises that have gotten into the habit of spending $200 million plus on a movie and then not recouping it at the box office because everyone's been trained to stay at home and wait for it to come out on streaming. And so it's still hard to pull off a movie of this magnitude without spending a ton of money.
Mhm.
But they have got to be smarter about it so they can get a return. That if the box office isn't what they hope for, the losses aren't as big, or it's still easier to make a profit off the movie, a modest profit off the movie. So that's one thing.
Mhm.
Two, how much of this movie was shot in the volume as
Right.
opposed to live action sets?
Right.
And I don't know how much cheaper that is, but how much did we hear about how much they could get done and how fast when the Mandalorian debuted because they were using that digital set to do so.
Mhm.
So I think that affords some savings as well on this. Third, you got Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni coming back to this movie. Guys who are used to this franchise, used to these characters. They know what they need to get and how to do it. So it
Mhm.
doesn't take quite as much exploratory work to do all these things. So
Yeah.
those are my guesses on why they were able to do it. It's weird to say $166.4 million is a bargain, but it seems like a
Right.
bargain by comparison.
Exactly. Yeah, and that was kind of what I was getting at with being able to reuse assets and things that they've already have, and I guess the volume is definitely one of those. Um, I wonder how much Starfighter has been budgeted for. Have we gotten that number? I feel like we have
No,
talked
but
about.
it's not complete. It's still in post-production, so
Mhm.
we're not likely to get that until 2027, the year it comes out.
Mhm. I'd be
So,
curious where it
yeah.
lands in the entire spectrum of Star Wars movies.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was more expensive because I feel like there's going to be more on location shooting for that movie
Mhm.
compared to Mandalorian and Grogu. Whether it's
Mhm.
going to come in at, Rogue One's 200 million. How do you reshoot 40% of a movie and still get it done for $200 million, especially when it's Star Wars?
It's actually really impressive,
Yeah.
quite honestly.
I guess we know why they went back to the well with Gilroy to do Andor, right? Because
Yeah,
the guy knows how to do things on a budget. So,
exactly.
okay. So, next big story. And this is going to have an impact on Star Wars, even though it may not be apparent at first. But the Disney company has announced the successor to Bob Iger as CEO, and that would be Josh D'Amaro. He'll be taking over in that role on March 18th, 2026. His previous role was Disney Experiences Chairman, and he's a 28-year veteran of Disney. In that role, he was responsible for 185,000 cast members worldwide, and he was also responsible for the company's biggest business segment with $36 billion in annual revenue. Alongside him getting appointed CEO, Dana Walden was named the president and chief creative officer. This is a brand new role in the Disney company. She is was the co-chairman of Disney Entertainment. She currently leads entertainment, media, news, and content business globally, including what's going on with streaming. And she will report directly to D'Amaro and will ensure that storytelling and creative expression across every audience touchpoint consistently reflects the brand, engages audiences and scale, and advances core business objectives while driving enterprise-wide initiatives and translating vision into action. If that is not a shareholder statement, I have never heard.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not kidding.
And meanwhile, Bob Iger will stay on in an advisory role on the board through the end of the year. So I've got thoughts about this. What do you think?
Well, I really had to look into this myself because I'll be honest, I wasn't really very versed on what this actually means, but from what I understand is that this is was a planned transition, obviously. And what really hits me about this though is as you said with Dana Walden being named president and chief creative officer in this new role is this sounds very familiar. A two-brain structure. Where have we heard this before very recently? So, Dave Filoni and Lin Brennan, for example, doing the whole Lucasfilm thing. So you've got the corporate brains on one end, you've got the creative brains on the other end. So, I mean, from what I understand, this is going to be a really advantageous kind of thing. It seems like Disney is really prioritizing financial stability and steady leadership, but also with this structure, it allows for a little bit more concentration for each one of them to be able to do what they do best. So, I think that, as far as that goes, that seems to be a good move. I know that there's been some things out there in the community that people are unsure about, but, for me personally, I think it's probably a good move on Disney's part. And one thing that it is going to do definitely is it's going to kind of restructure, I guess you could say, the next decade of a lot of the storytelling. So we'll see. But what are your thoughts?
Well, so, I'm someone who is a parks fan and is a
Mhm.
Disney Cruise Line fan and enjoys a lot of the Disney experiences. And Josh Tomorrow is responsible for a lot of those things. So I, it's hard to argue with making him the CEO when you see he's been responsible for 185,000 cast members and he's responsible for the business segment with $36 billion in annual revenue. That's exactly the type of guy you want running the entire company. But it is also important to recognize that he's not been in charge of television. He's not been in charge of movies. That is, as far as I know, not where his strengths lie. So, like you were just suggesting, it's important to have a key person involved that knows these things. And that comparison you made to what's going on with Filoni and Linwin is very apt there. Appoint people and let them work to their strengths and not have to learn a brand new field. In this
Mhm.
case, I know Dana Walden was very, very respected inside the Disney company, and there was a fear that if she did not get the CEO job, that she would leave, and that could be disastrous for the company. So kudos to them to figuring out how to make it work. She's only got one person to report to, the CEO. Well, that's
Mhm.
pretty good in that situation. To me, it speaks to stability there at the company that the park experiences are going to stay at the same quality and the level that we like them. I love them. If you aren't happy with Galaxy's Edge, that might be bad news to you as a Star Wars fan. Uh, I also enjoy most of the content that comes out on Disney Plus and in the theaters for Star Wars. And that's primarily going to be the responsibility of Lucasfilm. So Filoni et al. But that was Bob Iger's brand. Dana Walden reported to him, amongst other people. I don't see that that's necessarily going to change. So to me, I find all these comforting. I like it. I like the direction. Um, a little bit of a shakeup. I don't know how involved Dana Walden was with everything that was happening in Lucasfilm, but now she'll probably have more input than she did before. And she's been so successful. So I'm inclined to believe that's a good thing there.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I'm
So
pleased with all of this.
yeah, so I actually have 2 questions then,
Mhm.
especially with this being, Josh Tomorrow being more experience driven. Do you think that we'll see more Star Wars experience driven kinds of things? I mean, we already know that Galaxy's Edge is going through an overhaul,
Mhm.
in one of the parks. But do you think we'll see more expanses with cruises and different types of live experiences with that? And then secondly, does this make Dana Walden kind of Dave Filoni's boss in a lot of ways?
I am sure he will be reporting to her because
Mm-hmm.
she's president of the parent company.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, and I think that's actually important that he is going to have that guidance and someone he can report to there. But to answer the first part of your question, the Disney Cruise Line is just launched the third ship in their Wish class fleet that came out last November over Thanksgiving. They've just and that had didn't have a lot in the way of Star Wars experiences on board. It had the cargo bay area for and the kids club, and I don't think it really had anything else Star Wars themed to it. Fine, the Wish has a Star Wars hyperspace lounge. There's a fourth ship in that class coming out sometime next year. We don't know anything about it. And then there's 3 ships coming out in a brand new class, plus a 5th ship in the Wish class that's going to be in Japan. So there's ample opportunity for them to put something Star Wars in there if they want to. As for whether they will be doing anything with Galaxy's Edge, it's possible, but they've got a whole lot of other things going on in the Disney parks right now. Just looking at Disney World, they've taken out the Rivers of America and they are putting in and I'm talking about the Magic Kingdom, they're putting in a Cars themed attraction. And behind that, they're putting in a Villains Land. Over at Hollywood Studios, they've taken out the Muppets area and they're putting in a Monsters Incorporated ride and restaurants and land there. Over at Animal Kingdom, they've gotten rid of their dinosaur area. They're putting in an Indiana Jones ride in an Encanto area. Then the point is, the next several years are kind of spoken for new content over at Disney World. I know over at Disneyland, they are trying to expand those parks. They've got a Galaxy's Edge, as you just pointed out. That's the one that they are taking half of Galaxy's Edge and rolling it back 20 plus years in the timeline to give us the original trilogy characters. There is room at both Galaxy's Edge for an expansion. So I wouldn't put it past them to add something to Galaxy's Edge at either or both parks over the next 5 years, especially if these new movies do well. And there's an obvious tie-in type of experience that they could put there. Mm-hmm. But at the moment, it's not on the table as far as I know. They're kind of concentrating on other things. They're getting ready to open sometime in the next several years a new theme park in Dubai. So their engineers kind of got their hands full right now. Or their Imagineers, I should say. So I don't know that they really have the capacity to be worrying about creating new content for Galaxy's Edge right now. But I do think it's something we should expect in the future. I just don't know when that is.
That's fair.
Yeah.
A lot going on.
Indeed. So we'll keep our eye on all of that. Like I said, I'm encouraged by this. I'm happy with it. We'll see what it means for Lucasfilm Star Wars going forward over time. We would be remiss if we did not wish the maestro himself a belated happy birthday. He turned 94 on February 8th, and I think he got wheeled into the Boston Pops for a performance. Did you get to see any of that online?
I did. Yes, I did. 94 years young. And he was just smiling ear to ear, as John Williams always does. Just so impressive. I mean, just his presence in general, to be in the same room with him, I'm sure was such an honor. So yes, happy belated birthday indeed.
Okay.
And still composing.
Still composing, still doing work for Spielberg. So who just became an EGOT, by the way, for the Music by John Williams feature that was on Disney Plus. So congratulations to Steven Spielberg. And the last bit of news, speaking of the Galaxy's Edge, is that we have reopening dates for both Rise of the Resistance and Oga's Cantina. So Rise of the Resistance went down for January 20th for some refurbishment. And again, this is the Disneyland park that we're talking about, not Disney World. It is opening on February 13th. So the day this episode goes live, you will be able to get back onto Rise of the Resistance. There's no story changes. It is some badly needed maintenance on a ride that frequently has parts of it that don't work. There's B modes all over the place. So hopefully they figured out ways to stabilize that ride in its entirety. And then Oga's Cantina also went down for refurbishment on January 20th, and it will be opening back up on March 14th. And there might be some changes there because that is in the area of the park where they are shifting the timeline to the original trilogy. So I don't have a trip to the parks scheduled anytime soon, but I am hoping to be back there next year around Star Wars Celebration and take all this in.
Yes, indeed. And so if anyone's going, please let us know and take some pictures and tag us so we can see things from your point of view.
Exactly. Okay, well then, that'll do it for this episode of Podcast Stardust and our weekly discussion of Star Wars news. Thank you all for joining us. Hope you've enjoyed it, and if so, and you want to get our weekly take on all the latest in the galaxy far, far away, please consider subscribing to the podcast if you haven't done so already. We're pretty much available on all the podcatchers that are out there, and if we're not, let me know which one you're listening on, and or like to listen on, I should say, and I will do my best to get it there. And if you've enjoyed the show, we'd really appreciate it if we get your rating and review wherever it is that you listen to your podcast and support such things, especially if that is Apple Podcasts. And if you want to catch the entire back catalog of the show, maybe bone up on a few things before we get to episode 1000 next week, the best place to do that is over at TRZAP.com. It has the entire catalog of the show available for you. Jay, I want to remind everybody what our social media contacts are one more time.
You got it. So you can easily find us on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust. You can also find all of our Pinterest boards on our Pinterest pages, and then our 2 YouTube outlets, which are the traditional YouTube as well as YouTube Music. So please head over to both of those, like, subscribe, share those out. And as Dennis was mentioning, we are on pretty much every other streaming service and podcatcher as well. So head us up over there. And then you can always email us, podcaststardust@gmail.com. And so if you have any listener questions or if you have just anything in general, we would love to be able to give you a shout out on the air. So once again, that's podcaststardust@gmail.com. And then lastly, we also have a TeePublic store where you can pick up some Podcast Artist swag. So we have 7 different show logo designs available on all kinds of merch. And so once again, if you hit up that link in our show notes, it'll take you right to where you need to go.
All right. What you got going on in cosplay, Joe?
Well, you can always catch me on my Instagram, which is at j.snipscosplay as Ahsoka, the fourth sister, 2 different versions of Hera, my original concept Mandalorian, and many other things as well.
Okay, upcoming on the show on Monday, it's finally here, episode 1000 of Podcast Stardust. So we'll be doing a little bit of reminiscing, talking about a lot of Star Wars content that's coming out over the last 6+ years and everything we've talked about. And we actually recorded that episode first, and it was a lot of fun. So I hope you'll all come back and join us for that one. And then on Wednesday, because we've shuffled the schedule a little bit, instead of doing Clone Wars on Monday, it'll be coming out on Wednesday. And we are doing episode 10 from season 3. So I hope you join us for that one as well. It's going to be a fun discussion. With all of that said, thank you for listening to episode 999 of Podcast Stardust. Have a great weekend, and until next time, may the Force be